and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its management, or advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Hi, welcome. This is Dr. John DeMartini. This is one of the most amazing and inspiring shows that you can listen into. If you want to be on the edge of your seats, if you want to open up your heart, if you want to expand your mind, and you want to meet incredible people, stay tuned because you're just about to experience a transformative radio show that will change your life. And you're listening to the Dr. Pat Show that's coming up right next.
Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. Talk radio to thrive by. Powerful, inspiring, and coming to you live, bringing you stories of people like you and me, busting through and living life full out. Get ready to dare to wonder what your life would be like if you knew you could not fail.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on. You know, you all have heard me talk about growing up with a woman that was born in the South, the Deep South. And there are many things I've learned about the South and many things that I am also so acutely aware of, drawn to, and will always be in my bones. But the latest statistics on the state of education for students of color and low-income students in Southern United States is not just profoundly shocking, but if my mom were here today, she would have a call to action so great that I'd be out there with her on the streets as we did as children. Joining me here today are two incredible people, Raymond Perce and Megan Crowe. All I can say is this. Raymond is the CEO of the Southern Education Foundation, and Megan joins us here as a senior research and policy analyst for Southern Education Foundation. So what you're about to hear today are real numbers, real information. And the question has to be, what can you do? What can we do? Has anything changed since my mom walked the planet? Welcome to both of you. Raymond, Megan, it's great to have you both joining me here today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I am a researcher myself, so anytime I get a report or anytime I get information like this, I always look at the numbers and check and double check and triple check and whatever checking. But this is, to use the word inequity is probably an understatement, but it's really so odd that in the world we're living in today, we're still talking about this. Raymond, Megan, Raymond, let's start with you. In the world today, we're still talking about this, right?
Right, unfortunately.
I want to ask you both this first question, and then we'll get to the statistics. I want to know from each of you, what is it that gets you up every day? You know, what is the thing that has touched your heart, that has called you to step forward on a life path that shines awareness on inequity and in some cases injustice? What is it for each of you? Raymond, let's start with you.
Well, good question. And I'm a little bit older than Megan, and I've been in this fight for civil rights for many, many years on a number of angles. And I'm also, interestingly, a recent graduate of divinity school. So I kind of look at this differently.
Mm-hmm.
I look at this in the macro. I look at this as to purpose, and clearly inequity or disparity or unfairness. I just don't believe that's the way life is supposed to be.
No.
And that the inopportunities, the oppression, the disparities are because self-interest has been allowed to prevail. Self-interest, fear, discrimination has been allowed to prevail in our policies and practices all the way up to this day. And this is nothing new. The people who actually created what is now the Southern Education Foundation, many of them were abolitionists or abolished slavery. We go back before the Civil War, and it started right after the Civil War. And have always been people in this nation, black, white, whomever, who have felt that we cannot go on as a people if we with inhumanity baked into our systems, and inhumanity, whether it's slavery, inhumanity, whether it's Jim Crowe, discrimination, whatever, that's inhumanity. We cannot exist and do well as a people if we treat one another like this. So I look at it that way. So I wake up every morning, and particularly now at this point in my career, and I feel myself fortunate, if not blessed, to be the president of the Southern Education Foundation, advancing this historic over 154, 55-year mission of advancing education opportunity for African Americans in the South, and now students of color. And quite frankly, our original charter included poor whites back in 1867.
Yeah.
So I get on fire, and so to have people like Megan Crowe on our team to do this type of lengthy research that guides us in our policy recommendations and guides us in our conversations with legislators and policymakers to develop better policies and practices for the education of our children. I get excited about it just about every day I get up.
Wow. Thank you so much. Megan, how about you? What is it that literally touches your heart every day?
Thanks for that question. If you ask my mom growing up, she'd tell you I had a justice bone from the start. But I have traveled enough to realize that Americans are really given a deficit mindset, this idea that I have to take from you to get what I need. And it's not true. We all do better when we work together to achieve results. It costs us less as a nation to prevent problems than it does to treat them. And I have a young child myself, and I just feel very moved and aware of the level of privilege and opportunities that he has that other people don't. And I also recognize that if half of us are doing poorly, if half of us are in poverty or are unable to meet our needs, that actually depresses my sons and my economic opportunities as well. And I just really wish that as a society, Americans would think in a more collective way and understand we all do better when we're working together.
I'm on the same page as both of you. And I know that every day I'm shocked at what I hear. Let me just be very, very clear. I mean, the fact that I am witnessing in my lifetime, after being an advocate, a protester, you name it, for almost all of my life, to see an equal pay for women bill get crushed in the Senate, and then to even be talking about voting rights. So let's talk about how important it is for us all to get educated, right? Because I did a poll and I asked close to 30 to 40 women if they even knew that there was an equal pay bill on the table. 1 out of 40 did. So let's talk about where education lies in order for all of us to come together as humanity. Raymond?
It's so well stated. Awareness is critical. Awareness of the disparities alone, like the one you just pointed out in terms of equal pay. There are just some data and points of information that the major population, the masses, just don't know. And we're constantly finding ourselves being distracted by things that will divide us, whereas the things that, that unite people, where there's a common interest and common values, are much larger. Things like everybody wants their children to have an opportunity for a good education. Everybody wants to be able to go to a grocery store and be able to afford good food. Everyone wants to be able to live in a safe neighborhood. Everyone wants to be free of harassment. Everyone wants to be able to have access to capital to finance their dreams, whether it's a loan for a small business or whatever. But the sad reality is today, because of bad policies and bad practices, inequitable policies and inequitable practices, quite frankly, selfishness and greed amongst a few, these disparities just continue to sadly linger on. It is sadly linger on. And so reports like ours are there to point that out and point to a better way, policies and suggestions and solutions that could better address this. And it's nothing new. It's nothing that we don't know in our right mind would be better, for our entire nation, if not the entire world. It's just getting around the selfishness and that unfortunately continues to pervade throughout our policies.
And thank you for both of you. Thank you for both of you, again, shining a light on this, because I'll tell you what, if we don't keep shining a light on things like this, what happens with that is the dark takes over, and then we have to catch up. Megan, let's talk with you a little bit about this. This is something you're an analyst, you see the numbers, you're watching things, you're looking at, levels of awareness. I want to ask you this question. How correct am I when I said before, some things have not changed?
Oh, well, I would say not only have things not changed, but some of them have gotten worse.
There you go.
For example, but children eligible for free or reduced price lunches. That is a federal program, and the percentage of students that are able to receive free and reduced price lunches in schools has increased almost 10 percentage points in the last decade. And workplace policies that were instituted back in the 1930s that protected certain industries predominantly worked by white males. Those protections continue to this day to not protect workers in certain industries, like agriculture is one example. As well, they don't, as you pointed out, protect women to the same extent. Also, we see white men more often employed, more often promoted to positions of leadership, and then they become more likely to continue to promote people that look and, talk like them. And so Black leaders, other leaders of color are continuously passed over for jobs for which they are equally, if not more qualified. And this is depressing the economic outcomes of generations over time. So things that happened historically 100 years ago are not only still with us, but the compounding negative impacts have grown over the course of years and further depressed each subsequent generation's outcomes.
What I'm really struck by is, and first of all, thank you for sharing that. Here's what I'm really struck by, and I know this is a short interview, so I want to really try to honor your time. But before I ask my next question, how do people find out more about exactly what we're talking about and what you all are doing? Raymond, you want to give us that information?
Well, it's on our website, www.southerneducation.org. Our new report that's coming out now is right on that page. But you can go on our website and find out much of what we're doing, a lot of our publications and our announcements.
Yeah, and I want to say to everybody, if you go there, you'll be able to see right on the homepage, there's a fact sheet. If you go to the resource section of the site, you'll also see a blog, publication, news, and events. There's a lot here. But most importantly, when you go to the website, there's something very interesting that I grew up with. It's a word that my mom always put forward to us about who we were going to become in the world, and that's called the challenge. I want to ask each of you, this is more than just a fact sheet and research. For me, this is a call to action. I was talking with a number of, colleagues of mine, and I said, can we get together? Because I want to plan for what we're going to do, the next 1 million person march that we're going to do once the switch is flipped on COVID. And they looked at me on a call and they said, that could be a year from now. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do? Are you going to sit and do nothing? Or are you going to try to think ahead on what you're going to do to cause a change? That's what I want to ask each of you in parting. What is your personal message? What is your call to action for people that will hear this? People in the United States, but all over the world. About
get involved.
Get involved.
Get involved, people. Get the facts. Make sure that look at the facts and check the references and the resources for the facts. There's so much misinformation out there, and a lot of that misinformation is designed to make people feel good about the status quo. People should not feel good about the status quo, and people should understand that the disparities and many of the problems that exist today that have visited upon certain populations of this country are by design. They were baked in. Slavery was by design. Jim Crowe was by design. Redlining was by design, and the vestiges and the remnants of that continue on to this day. And the facts are there. The facts are there. So just please, people, get involved, educate yourself, and then get involved with your legislators and your elected officials to bring about policies and practices that are good for all citizens of this country and not just for a few.
Raymond, thank you. Megan, how about you? What do you want to leave us with today?
My message for today, I think, would just be that, like it or not, we have to all get together. The inequities that disproportionately affect Black and brown kids in the U.S. ultimately do affect everybody. You might not see it readily in your homes or in your daily lives, but once we get out into the workforce and we talk about the U.S.'s ability to stay competitive on the global marketplace, we are losing significant ground. And I know that everybody cares about having a thriving economy in which they live. So if we treat the most underserved among us, we treat everybody in the state. So we need to get together and all do this for everyone, because the results that are yielded for a Black child out in a rural southern state affect my kids' future.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much to both of you. Again, Megan, give us that website.
Yes, the website is www.southerneducation.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much to both of you. And you all out there, please check it out. Yes, there is something you could do. Let's take a short break. We'll see you in a minute. Hey, everybody, welcome. It's so great to have all of you tune us in and turn us on for a good news segment. Now, look, many of you have heard me talk about what it's like to one day wake up and be cut off from the people that you're so accustomed to being around. But what is it that we've learned from this? Well, I'm not the expert in here. Dr. Lee Lindquist is, Chief of Geriatrics at Northwestern Medicine. And here's the thing. Social isolation, as bad as smoking for seniors. Wow. Dr. Lindquist, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks to have me too.
Yeah. So my listeners have heard me kind of like talk about the fact that, one day all of us are up playing table tennis and, we have great facilities here for seniors and they start at a fairly young age. Like our senior center is like 55 or something. I don't even know. But this is a gathering place and people were so just distraught. They were just so in pain by the isolation. What have you discovered about the isolation from this pandemic?
Yeah, so I'm a geriatrician, so I take care of older adults, and I'm an expert when it comes to senior care. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing is that people are experiencing significant cognitive loss and physical function loss with this isolation. So people who normally just have a few senior moments, it's increasing. The number of senior moments are increasing. People are forgetting to do things that they normally have been able to do. And so it's really taking an impact on people's health. And so that's one thing that we're seeing more and more is that as this isolation continues, people are really struggling with it.
I mean, it's a bold statement to say it's as bad as smoking. But I know from everything that I've talked to people about, it really is. Tell us what seniors are experiencing. What have they been experiencing?
Well, pretty much they've been experiencing living in a nursing home. If you think about living in four walls and not being able to go outside and just having a TV in your room, this is like being in a nursing home. And so we've seen so many times, and there's so many studies out there that if you don't exercise your brain, or if you don't exercise your muscles and you think of your brain as a muscle, it tends to go to sludge. And so when we hear people that say, oh, so-and-so went into a nursing home and their cognition got really bad. Yeah, I mean, this is what we're seeing is that older adults who are isolating, rightly so, to avoid COVID are actually having cognition problems. And we're seeing this over and over again.
I want to ask you this question because I've had this conversation before, and it seems like we are baffled as to what to do. But I believe there are things that we can do. And I believe there are things that, whether it's assisted living or, someplace where a senior is residing now, there are things we could do. Is awareness really the issue here, that people are not aware that this is the effect and therefore they don't think there's any action to take?
I think it's actually more than awareness, because I feel like there's no pill, there's no easy medicine to take to make it better. What I usually recommend people do is that they need to socially stimulate more. Give people calls, call your friends, call other seniors, reach out to people you haven't talked to in a while. Listen to a show like the Dr. Pat Show, and contact others and say, I listened to this great show. Actively socially stimulate yourselves and others. And then the other thing is to exercise. We know that exercise can improve cognition, can delay cognitive loss. And that's something that we haven't been able to do because of COVID. And so the more exercise, the less sitting. Even if you sit 5 minutes less a day, your thinking is going to be better, your muscles are going to function better, and you're going to be healthier.
Dr. Lindquist, you've been featured in hundreds of media venues. You've been on pretty much every television network out there. This is beyond a conversation. This is your passion and your purpose. Tell me what has touched your heart early on to have this become a life path for you.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I grew up closely with my grandparents, and they lived in rural Wisconsin. And they were the youngest of 7 and the youngest of 5. So we were always visiting people in the nursing home, always visiting people, who are older and remote. And it just really showed me that these were people who definitely needed good care, who definitely needed more support. And they weren't always getting the best health care, and they weren't always getting treated well. And so that's why it's a passion of mine that we need to treat our seniors better. But then we also have to help our caregivers, our family members of loved one, help connect them to the right care. And in geriatrics, there's not enough geriatricians to go around to help all the seniors out there. And so with Northwestern Geriatrics, we've been able to build a program where we can offer telehealth no matter where you are in the country. And you can get a geriatric evaluation for your loved one over the phone or over a Zoom call. And so if people are interested, they can definitely reach out to us at Northwestern Medicine Geriatrics, which is at nm.org/geriatrics, because it's so important that we take care of our seniors, because if we're lucky, we'll all be seniors someday. And we need to keep it going. We need to pass on the goodness.
And tell everybody how they can find out more about this, how they can find out more about, what you all are doing. What's the best website for people to go to?
Yeah, so it's the Northwestern Medicine Geriatrics website, which is nm.org/geriatrics.
So let's talk for a minute on solutions. We cannot emphasize enough that isolation takes many forms. The very fact that perhaps one day you were communicating with people, whether it be in assisted living, whether it be in a senior home, it doesn't matter, but you were communicating one day and the next day you were not. It seems like the general consensus is, well, they can just do a Zoom call. That is not exactly how this works, but there are solutions. Even if we look at something as this simple stair machine that you sit down and you use, that the family could buy for their parents. There are solutions, aren't there, to keep the body moving, to keep people fresh.
Yeah, one of my favorite Christmas gifts that I saw people passing around, and you can even think about like future birthday presents or just because presents, were Fitbit watches or like those Garmin watches.
Yeah.
Where I've had a couple seniors that bought it for other senior friends, and then they all compete to see how many steps they take. Or we've seen grandkids have a Fitbit watch and the grandparent have a Fitbit watch. Or Garmin watch, whichever one. And then they can give each other, cheers and like fireworks if they hit a specific target, or they say, okay, grandma's not moving as much, let's get her moving, and kind of prompt her to get going. And I think it's also a fun way. We think of intergenerational discussions and intergenerational stimulation as being huge. Because if you can have grandkids interacting more with grandparents, whether it's teaching them how to use technology, or, texting back and forth, these are things that will stimulate the senior, but then also give value to the senior from a grandparent or grandchild view. because we know that if a grandchild treats the grandparent well, then there's a good chance that they'll treat their own parents well.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about this because, we have to get innovative around this. My friend's mom and dad, they have these, what is it called? Sudoku contests where they all get the same book and they all go through it, and they have, these prizes that they've created for people that can get through it, that want to do that. There's so many different things that I'm finding that are becoming innovative to really support each other. And it's really fascinating how sophisticated this has gotten. I mean, if you want a clue, you have to give up a cookie or something. I love it, by the way. I just love it.
And I'm glad you're mentioning it because people are one of the things that we're practicing or trying here is for our research is that we're actually putting the Oculus, those VR virtual reality headsets you see advertised all the time. We're actually putting them on seniors as well as grandchildren and seeing how they walk through Perce together, even though they're in two different states, and seeing how they interact. So it's very interesting how we can harness technology to support our seniors.
Well, I love what you're doing. I love that you're coming out here. I know that I live in the Pacific Northwest, and one of the things that we are, how should I say it? Our senior population are nationally ranked table tennis players. I'm just going to put it out like that. But we also support the BAT Foundation because we found that the studies on a special type of ping pong table is so good for the brain. And so we've been really out there in the state of Washington, really pushing this forward and really saying to these places, look, this is just another thing you can do. We don't know why the science shows the improvement in brain functionality, but it does. How do people get involved? Because if we're not getting involved in this, we're not going to come up with ideas. You know what I'm saying?
No, and I love the table tennis idea. I will say, growing up with my grandparents, we actually had a table tennis set downstairs, and we would play for hours, table tennis. So I actually can beat my kids hands down anytime we come across the table. So I love that a lot of your listeners are table tennis players. But it comes down to, actually reaching out to people. And that's not always something that we're comfortable with, is reaching out to others and checking on them, talking to them, whether it's a person that we haven't talked to in a long time. There's this need to not bother people. I don't want to bother them, but we should be bothering them. We should be stimulating them. We should be talking to them. And the other thing too is to, speak to the physicians, speak to the geriatricians that are involved in their care, to see if there's anything that can be done to help support them.
Now, I know we have like 2 minutes left, but I must ask you this question. I don't think our listeners really understand why isolation is so dangerous. I work with women in addiction and recovery, and I know firsthand why isolation, regardless of age, is so dangerous. But why is it so dangerous for seniors?
Yeah, so isolation worsens your memory, it worsens your physical function, and it worsens your mood. So isolation is as bad as smoking, and that's why we're trying to help people be less isolated.
Well, I want to thank you for today. I know that you have so many of these interviews to do, but I also would like to remind people again, how do they find out more? Dr. Lindquist, how do they get involved? And then I'd like to know your personal message, what you'd like to leave us with today.
Yeah, so people can reach us at nm.org/geriatrics, which is the Northwestern Medicine Geriatrics website. And my statement would be to stay well, reach out to people around you, talk to them, and sit less every day. Get some exercise in those bodies.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee Lindquist, expert in the field, passionate about what we can do to improve the life, the lifestyle, and the longevity of our most precious asset, our senior folks.